So hello, my name is Xenofon Babadimitris. I'm a professor of American Informatics and Data Science here at Yale. This video is part of a series of supplementary interviews recording for a new program in medical software and medical AI. Our guest today is Andrea Biasiucci from Confinis in Switzerland. And Andrea will talk to us about all things Europe, European AI Act, and the issues that he sees as they go. So Andrea, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you and your company, and we'll get started from there.
Thank you very much, Xenius. It's a privilege to be here, and I would say working again with you and Yale on these Coursera courses. So I am a biomedical engineer and electronic engineer by training, a serial entrepreneur. I built and sold two neurotech companies in the past. I've been working as a regulatory, quality and clinical affairs consultant for medical device for quite some time now. I've been at Roche managing digital products at Roche. And since July this year, I'm back in this consulting firm, Confinis, dealing with the growth of this company and dealing with the new world that we live in. And that's, I think, the topic that we will cover today.
Get to the technical issues of AI towards the end. I guess what I would like to start is a lot of you are asking questions about the EU AI Act. You're not in the EU, but you're surrounded by the EU there, probably. So what's the state of it? I mean, is this done? Is it still in progress? What is the kind of situation?
Yes, so the AI Act is one of the regulations that belong to this new legislative framework of the European Union. This new legislative framework also generated two of the texts that people in the medical device and IVD space know and love the most, which is the NDR and the IVDR text, this regulation, medical device regulation, in vitro diagnostic regulation. And under the same framework idea, the European Union wanted to develop a text that would legislate how AI is produced and commercialized in Europe, trying to place Europe in the, let's say, in the first row of innovation. We will discuss in a moment whether this was the case or not. There have been many different acts and texts proposed out, let's say, publicly. And in June this year, the European Union has finally voted in favor of the implementation of some, let's say, discussion around this final text. And so this text is final, it's being deployed, and it is starting to have an effect in terms of coordination with different other texts that are alive. And as of today, the use of artificial intelligence in Europe will be regulated according to the AI Act, which is, by the way, the first comprehensive law about AI worldwide. So that's a primate we can say Europe achieved.
Yeah, I mean, the US is still working its way through that. What are the main provisions of this act? What are we looking at in a piece of legislation like this?
Yes. So as it's often the case in European legislation, Europe started from some values, very high level. So they foresaw that AI systems used in Europe are safe, transparent, traceable, non-discriminatory, and environmentally friendly. As you can imagine, all these topics together do not define an easy task for the legislator to draft a text that is pragmatic. In general, the legislative approach has been also the same of the other regulated products that we know quite well in this environment of courses, which is the medical device products, so medical products in general. And the basic idea is that anything that happens on placing on the market medical products or regulated products in general in Europe is risk-based. So using the same approach, the European Parliament wanted a regulation that would stratify requirements based on risk of these AI systems, following I would say, familiar approach in the structure of these requirements and how these devices or products are managed in the future. Now, as part of the implementation of this text, Europe tried to provide a unified definition of AI systems, very hard task, that is technology neutral. And they also at the same time try to establish some red lines around what can be done and cannot be done. So there is a ban as of today in Europe on certain AI practices, including biometric identification, some biometric categorization, some predicting policing system that based on profiling, emotion recognition system that is used in the context of law enforcement without an authorization by law institutions like some more courts, and use of facial images for profiling reasons. Now, this is one. So the idea that we ban certain use cases is already strong by itself. It has many implications in the way manufacturers may end up in being one of those cases. And this goes close to the idea of having high-risk products. So the idea is that there's the certification in two levels of risk: low-risk AI, high-risk AI. And in high-risk AI, you would include any system that has an effect on human health and safety or fundamental rights or environment. These concepts are put together. In the medical space, that's the world that I live most of my days. We are more used about speaking only. We are more used to speak only about health and safety, not really about these other aspects. They're more holistic. And there is also, this text is also special because it differentiates the use of AI for influencing potential votes in the Eurozone. That's another interesting aspect they discussed, imagining the future. Finally, and that closes this little chapter, sub-chapter, is they define in the text, so this text defines general purpose AI obligations. So obligations on manufacturers that develop general purpose AI. And this includes mitigating risks, registering models in a EU database that sooner or later will appear. It speaks explicitly of generative AI models that have to comply with transparency requirements, meaning that they have to disclose that the content was AI generated. They must also distinguish between deepfake and real images, and have in general safeguards for illegal uses, potential illegal uses. This is interesting because it sounds very similar to what we know as general safety and performance requirements of the devices that we have in the medical device and IVD spaces. And finally, the text has the purpose in general to be supporting innovation and protect the rights of the European citizens. So that's the overall scope of this regulation.
So if I look at that and think about medical devices now, are medical devices high risk in this context? Or is it some of them are and some are not? How do we come into that?
Yes, thank you. So this is a very interesting question and quite a hot topic. And a small anecdote, I was in Berlin in June for the Medical Device Regulator Forum, so this INDRF, and this was one of the topics that people talked about the most. What is the cross interaction between the AI Act and the Medical Device Regulation? Well, in general, they cite each other. So the AI Act cites the Medical Device Regulation, and there are some implications. So it's from the AI perspective, the medical device complying with the medical device regulation requirements is necessarily not sufficient to be compliant with the AI Act, and this establishes a hierarchy of text. So the AI Act would be higher priority, legislative priority, than the medical device regulation, meaning that a device that is compliant with MDR would still need to comply with the rest of the AI Act in order to be used as an AI medical device. That's the current the current, let's say, short explanation. In practical terms, the AI already specifies a few provisions that we can assume will not change too much, meaning that whenever device is placed on the market, and the placing on the market of that device requires a third party to intervene in the conformity assessment procedure, which means notified bodies need to assess the tech file for medium, low, medium high, and high risk products, they would also fall in the high risk class in the AI Act. That is something we know already. Another thing we know, and that's probably also going the direction of the discussion we have here, is that the way the AI Act is structured seems to already indicate a conformity assessment procedure of AI systems. And this would mean that we could have notified bodies that go through a conformity assessment procedure for AI systems, which opens up a lot of very creative ways to forecast future in this domain.
I know, just to back out a little for those of the students listening for the first time to these things, can you talk a little bit about what notified bodies are, and then we'll come back to how they interact here.
Yes, absolutely, with pleasure. So the regulatory framework in Europe for medical products, especially medical device, that are defined as devices that have an effect on health or in diagnostics or in therapy, implies that the level of scrutiny that the authorities need to have towards the product depends on the risk that the product poses to human health. Mm-hmm. This means that if you have a scalpel, you need to imagine the worst possible case. What can a scalpel do? And scalpels typically cut, so they can generate a cut in a place that's unwanted. And the risk of the device itself is limited to the fact that they can cut. So this device is a relatively low risk, while a pacemaker could, and a defect in the pacemaker could potentially kill a person or a series of people. And that's why some products are classified as low risk and some of high risk. Now, this is an easy differentiation. The regulatory framework in Europe also specifies that you have 4 classes, and that's aligned with the international regulation that specifies that you have low risk, medium low risk, medium high risk, or high risk. This is class what we call 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. The US system has just 3 classes. We like to make it more comprehensive, let's say, in Europe. But now, this is what specifies the risk class of the device. It depends on what the worst use or a defect in the device can do towards the health of a person. And depending, so all the devices that fall in the medium or high class require that the manufacturer establishes a technical file. That's also true for the low-risk devices. But for medium and high-risk devices, a third party needs to inspect the tech file, the documentation, in order to grant the CE mark that allows people to sell in the unified market in Europe. These entities are called notified bodies. There are, let's say, not to make it too complex, but in Europe, we have the European Commission and the notified bodies. They have a joint, let's say, responsibility to check files and devices that enter the European market. Then there are national competent authorities that are responsible for checking the post-market surveillance, making sure that the device is safe on the market and effective. And notified bodies only have the duty to be there, to screen the files, make sure that the documentation is comprehensive, there are no gaps, and be informed of potential vigilance cases or adverse events on the market. So these notified bodies, so as you see, there are 3 entities in Europe that deal with the medical device framework. The European Commission, that normally just gives power to different entities to do things. The competent authority, post-market surveillance, and notified bodies, private entities that screen the tech files and give CE marks for medium and high-risk products.
So now, when it comes to the EU AI Act, are we talking about another set of notified bodies effectively? Are we going to do the pre-market review for AI products, or are this going to be the same thing for medical products? Are they going to be the same body that does both? What's the feeling right now?
Yes, this is a hard question to answer right now, because as of today, none of this is yet implemented. And we know how it, so for example, let's take the example of notified bodies that act on different regulated industries. The automotive industry is regulated, and the automotive industry has a set of notified bodies that can deal with the quality aspects of the automotive industry. Even if we look at the medical device and IVD differentiation, because there are 2 different legal texts, we will see that notified bodies may be the same private entity that gets an accreditation to do reviews and give CE marks of according to that legislation, for example, the medical device regulation, and sometimes the same company can have the scope for the medical device regulation and the in vitro diagnostic regulation. So it would be kind of natural that you would have a scope for, or let's say, a designation for AI that would complement and complete this this set. But I mean, the practical implementation, given it's so let's say it's so tightly linked. So the AI text is linked to many other texts and depends on many other texts. It's still not clear how this will happen. Also, because unfortunately, the AI Act has several contradictions with respect to some provisions set forth in the medical device regulation, and most importantly, in the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. And that opens up a new topic for today, which is how data is used and processed in Europe. And this is actually specified in this regulation called GDPR.
So I was going to ask you, so if I am designing a new medical device software tool, sound or something like that, so I need to worry about three big regulations right now. There's a medical device regulation, there's a GDPR for data privacy, and the AI Act if I'm doing anything to do with AI. And so that was exactly my question. How complementary versus contradictory are those? Are the requirements compatible, or do they need to be harmonized internally first?
Yeah, let's say they're all comprehensive and complex texts. And it's amazing how, so you see, I work in a company that serves the industry. So we deal with practical problems every day. And when I was at this medical device regulators forum, I had the chance to speak to a member of the commission that was saying, when we wrote the MDR, we thought no one would need any other guidance documents than the MDR itself. It's so comprehensive, so self-explanatory, 150 pages of text. So now that gives the perspective of the legislator, the regulator. When they develop this text, they think it's self-encapsulated. And then there is a cascade of implications. For example, the AI Act specifies that whoever manufactures an AI needs to be transparent or accountable for the integrity of the data represented there. While the GDPR ensures that whoever manages, treats, processes the data should not give access to certain types of data, such as patient data, that's illegal. So at the same time, we may be forced by law to have access to data and forced by law to not have access by data. And that's the typical controversy and contradiction that is often there. Because on one hand, we want to protect the data privacy and the rights of the users towards their own data. On the other side, we want to protect let's say the health, so ensure safety for the health of patients that needs, for these models, it needs to give us access to the details of the data that is used to generate a model or to predict anything.
Yeah, sounds all very interesting and complicated. You sort of mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but I'm going to come back to this. Do we have a definition of what AI is in these things? Like is regression fitting AI in this domain? Is all software AI? Do you need to be a neural network before you're AI? Like, what is the definition of AI we're operating under? By the way, this is the impossible question. I know that nobody has a good handle on it.
You're asking me something very, very hard to reply. First of all, I come from machine learning myself, so I did research in machine learning, and I would have a very hard time as a technical expert, as a scientist, to give you a unified definition of AI. What is AI? In my times, that was linear algebra. So now, let's say the authorities are trying to come up with very generic definitions. The AI Act provides one. It's hard for me to comment on that, also because there are a number of standardization groups, ISO groups, that are working on definitions. And each group comes up with a different definition. Some focus on the technology used to generate a certain output. Some focus on the way this output is formulated and how this output may influence whoever is using that output. So it's very hard to say. And right now, there's no, because they say we have a problem in Europe to come up with a European definition, but this is a more generic international problem of finding one definition that needs to be harmonized across legislations.
Yeah, talking about that. So moving a little bit away from the legislative work and come back to your work. I'm sure you're seeing an avalanche of products. I mean, we talked really 2 years ago, and we talked for like half an hour. Did we talk about AI for 30 seconds? I'm sure that the world has changed since the last time. What are you seeing on the AI space in terms of products? What are your challenges in helping companies get through this whole gauntlet? And what do you think the future is going to bring to you here? The future, I mean tomorrow, the next 6 weeks. I'm not even sure we know what's going to be very far in the future.
Yeah, I was thinking before having this interview about our discussion 3 years ago, and I think we talked briefly about AI coming. We didn't know what AI was there. I think coming also back to the question you asked before, the definition of AI. Now, there is a part of these algos, because we often mix algos and AI. Now, I tend to see more, let's say, the use of data itself, some models, meaning machine learning based approaches to manipulating data and generating output as a unified, extended definition of AI. So whatever takes some data in and generates some output, that would be an AI. So in my work, we help hundreds of clients in the field, in the industry of medical devices, to either stay on the market because they already are on the market, or to access the market. And now we're seeing a very steep increase in requests in large language model based processing of information. Now, the typical use case is for diagnostic purposes. We also have other use cases in, let's say, in the testing space, analyzing output of tests, summarizing output of tests. And so what I'm doing with our team here is use available commercial models. So what I expect about the future is a lot more commercial AI as a service. Microsoft is investing in that. We will soon have Copilot in Europe. You already have the privilege to have it there. We have note-taking apps. We have many things that I want people to start using to understand what this technology can do well. Summaries does it very well. Where does it fail? Right now, we see limitations in discussing. So this machine is good in generating text that resembles natural language. That's how it's built, because of the way it's built. It fails where in domains where it has few instances to base its processing. So the probability of words being associated with few observations in their starting data set comes out very weird. So what we perceive is quite weird is if you talk 3 hours with one of these GPTs, you would end up in a weird discussion because it's very unlikely to have these long chains. And the same way, if you generate a scientific paper with this technology, you may enter what we call an hallucination, meaning it's a human-like plausible text that has completely no meaning, but it generates fake references, fake text, fake conclusions in a way that's quite dangerous. So now we are training people, long story short, in our company to deal with the risks that we start to see, hallucinations being submitted to authorities. How would an authority deal with an hallucination in a test report, for example? Very hard to say. And what's the implication, legal implication? Whose fault? Like, imagine I dimension a bone fixation plate a tenth of what it should be because the AI hallucinated on the mechanical test report. Whose fault is that? Is it the company fault? The test lab that use the AI fault? So we are seeing a number of new problems arising from the use of this technology, but it's clear that it has disruptive potential that is enormous. I also want to tell you one last thing about this topic. In last month, there was a national congress of the Swiss medtech industry. So I was invited to speak about innovation, how to bring innovation to the EU market. And I said, okay, let me check some reports and data that we have about the use of AI. So I found some very interesting McKinsey reports that's quite recent about what do people that are proficient with the use of AI think about. So while the majority of mainstream users thinks about how to be more efficient with AI, the majority of proficient users that already do use AI think about either new business model or the lack of existing AI models, technical models, to do something that they would like to do. And I think that this distance shows to all the students that are listening to this course how important it is to test it. Like, dirty your hands, get to work with these tools, understand how they work, and try to find a meaningful use to that. It's not just in a pre-made box. So that's my encouragement. Just try to understand how it works. We're in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are issues, but this thing isn't going to go away, right? I mean, the future is there. We need to learn how to manage it. We'll have to work around the risks associated with it, but we're not going to go back. There's no way that this is going to.
I agree with you. And I think that the fact that the legislation is lagging behind the pace of innovation is a huge, and it's a fantastic opportunity. That's why courses like these are very important, because people get to see the regulatory implications. You cannot just do anything and put it on the market. You need to comply with certain rules, and this could shape the products you want to put on the market in Europe. Now, it is also true that I have a few friends like Stephen Gilbert that makes research on this topic, who have analyzed the different approaches in the US and Europe towards new technology, and AI in particular. And right now we live in a world that's heavily split, because there is a part of the world that's trying to go for the deregulated approach, giving big tech companies freedom to play and test, even sometimes a bit beyond their normal scope or the normal legislative framework. And at the same time, Europe is trying to stop things from happening too fast. So the AI Act is an attempt to just, let's say, put a gate, limit the flow of innovation, uncontrolled innovation, trying to protect some basic rights. It's based on value. On the other side, it's more pragmatic, say, get it out, get the best possible, and then we see how to identify risks and mitigate them.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting world we live in, for sure. Andrea, thank you for all this. I don't keep you much longer, but is there anything else you thought was important to say before we close?
Now, thank you for this occasion. I believe that the most important thing to say now is that the foreseeable future will be dominated by good education. Because it's true that we have AI, we have the artificial intelligence, but we have a philosophical question we need to start asking ourselves more often is, why cannot a machine do what I'm doing right now? And what is that makes me unique in completing that task and essential to the completion of that task? Because although we have seen some impressive demos right now, I've never seen one that convinced me that the human can be completely ignored especially in the medical device sector, in the medical sector. So that's an encouragement to everyone to get educated on this and get deep into the details.
Thank you. Let's stop there. Bye.